Mr. Poole, R.L. Poole, P-O-O-L-E, you have opened up my eyes. Everything you say makes sense, provided we interpret it in terms of the U.S. patent. We first tried to interpret the United States patent on levitation, a levitational craft, and then we apply it to Edward Leedskalnin according to the clues that you have discovered. And it's a bombshell, because everything you say is correct. The gas laws are really bizarre, because everything is. The universe is an electric universe, as somebody has already said. Thornhill, I believe it was. Anyway, the sun is not hot. What we call temperature is not what it appears to be. The sun is not hot. I'm having cramps, I'm sorry, in my feet. I gotta stand to do this. Okay. The gas laws purportedly state that the temperature and pressure of a gas vary directly with each other. They do not vary inversely. And I always take this to be a condition of negative resistance. It is an admission to negative resistance, because positive resistance is Ohm's law, in which the voltage and the amperage vary inversely with each other at a fixed wattage. But under Mohs law, when you flip the situation and you have superconductivity at room temperature, voltage and current vary directly. Okay? And that's why a gas, let's say a neon bulb, a gas discharge tube, can behave as a negative resistor. Okay, now, the sun is not hot. We have, according to the sun as a planet, or there's some website in which they interpret the NASA data a little differently. They say the sun is a planet. It is composed of calcium ferrite, and it has an oceanic atmosphere in the state of a plasma composed of two layers of neon and silicon. Now, in our world, silicon, in the presence of oxygen, wants to unite and form quartz, while neon is a gas. Yet silicon is behaving there as a plasma, which is an electrified gas, an ionized gas, right? It's very highly charged gas with a very high charge to it. And what is that charge? It's a voltage charge without current. See, if we maintain, everything about temperature and pressure of a gas is totally equivalent to electricity, because the temperature is current and the pressure is voltage. Literally, it's 1-to-1. But when we take an object and we say we reduce the temperature to absolute zero, and then let's say the object is a copper coil, and we reduce it to Kelvin temperature, we say that the resistance goes to zero. But now we've overlooked something. We have maintained the atmospheric pressure of the substance. It's the same pressure. It's, let's say we're at sea level when we do this experiment. We lower the temperature of the coil of wire, and then we send some energy, electrical energy, through the coil, and we find out, whoa, look at this. There's no resistance anymore in the coil. We get magnetic levitation. Ooh, yummy, yummy. But what if Edward Leedskalnin's perpetual motion holder, modified according to your design in your book, what is the book? Better get it. Hey, I bought it from you, right? I bought it from you, and it's responsible for me understanding levitation of UFOs like I never have before. Where's the book? Here it is. It looks backwards to me. See? That's your book. And that's your pretty face, right? I followed you 6 years ago. I started to follow you, and I couldn't make heads or tails. It's better now. I know more, so I can figure more of this out. Okay. So what was I saying? Um, so let's see. Oh, so you claim that you understand the circuitry of, but when I thought about it, you know what it is? Edward Leedskalnin's device is basically a UFO power supply that creates levitation with one teeny little distinct difference. And what comes in handy is knowing how Wilhelm Reich came into the picture. Now, the great inventor of the orgone blanket got himself arrested, put in jail, and murdered before he was allowed to be released. Just before he was going to be released, he was murdered in jail, in prison. And all his books were burned and banned before, in this country, after, upon his arrest, because he pointed his cloudbuster, and this is in the Kate Bush music video that Donald Sutherland makes in conjunction with Kate Bush back in 1985, is it? I believe, I don't know, somewhere around in there, maybe slightly earlier than that. Maybe it was in the 70s, I don't know. Anyway, it's I love Donald Sutherland. Anyway, so he gets arrested. Why? Because he dissipated the cloud that the UFO was hiding inside of. And once that cloud dissolved completely, the UFO crashed to the ground. And he went running, looking, I gotta help. Because he's a physician. His job, his mental programming is to heal people and help people. So he's a total innocent lamb. He has no idea what he's running into. He should have run away. Run to Canada, but no. He ran to the situation and he got himself arrested, because the U.S. military was going there, rushing there at the same time. Who knows? Maybe the occupants died inside the craft. It could be. But he ran and got himself arrested because what he did, see, his Cloudbuster is a very simple device. It's a waveguide antenna composed of various pipes, like the pipes in a pipe organ, tuned to resonate at certain frequencies, or quarter wavelength of certain frequencies if you prefer. Technicalities, I don't have to worry about. I'm not an electrical engineer, so I can just look at the big picture and don't worry about the details. Let somebody else figure out the details, okay? I'm just giving you the overview. So it resonates with certain frequencies and it grounds itself out to a moving body of water. This is very important. And the connection it has with that moving body of water, let's say a stream, is electrical conduit, which is basically flexible pipe tied to the other end, the opposite end of those pipes. One end is pointing towards the cloud and the other end is connected to metallic electrical conduit, which then is coils down or flexes down to a moving body of water. He's ionizing the body of water because he's grabbing hold of the electrostatic field, if you prefer to say the electric field or the dielectric field, call it what you wish, surrounding the UFO, probably positively ionized if it's to create a cloud of moisture. Because that's how you create smog. You create an inversion layer of positive charge above, if I got that right, above a negative charge. Did I say that right? Oh, darn no. Let me think. You extend to higher altitude the negative charge of the surface of the planet. That's the way I used to think of this. Oh, right. In order to create smog. And then the positive layer above that it keeps a cap so that the smog stays underneath. But that's within a negative charge. That's not right. Okay, forget anything I ever thought in the past. It's history. No, when they do chemtrail spraying, they have to do it in a situation in which the humidity is 70% minimum, and the ionization potential, the polarity of the ionization potential is positive, not negative. Because if it's negative, you have a condition similar to after rain has passed through the area, and no particulate matter, or no moisture for that matter, can stay suspended in the atmosphere. It has to drop out of the sky. This is how a negative ion generator works. It cleans the air because it charges the air with negative ions, and everything, moisture, particulate matter, falls to the ground and dirties your floor instead of dirtying your lungs. Okay, so a cloud is a positively charged electrostatic field. Now, you can have a UFO go either way. You can have it create... No, it can't. Oh, this is interesting. That's right. I never see. I'm learning things as I speak. If the UFO creates a negative ionic field, then it can submerge itself below water and buoy and work against the buoyancy of water, because it has to fight that too when it wants to go underwater. But when it wants to rise above water and hang in the atmosphere at a certain altitude, it has to be a positively charged ionic field surrounding it. But it has to be electrostatic because it has to stay put. And so this is the difference with Ed Leedskalnin's device, because he uses the iron chain to transfer the electrostatic field of his device to the boulder and dissipate the electrostatic field of the device so the device doesn't levitate, but the object, the boulder, does instead. And of course, he has to stay nearby and touch the boulder at all times, because if he doesn't, the voltage charge building up in the boulder is going to ground itself to the nearby land through, through Ed Leedskalnin. So he has to charge the ground at all times, both before and after the poor block is levitating, is raised up off the ground, so that everything in the surrounding area is the same charge. And notice he's doing it. He's standing on rock coral when he does this. See, now this bothered me. This bothered me. How come he doesn't get electrocuted? How come the electrostatic charge that's building up in his body and in the boulder doesn't ground itself out and create electrocution? Because he hasn't increased the wattage. See, the video that I had linked to and spread around, it's not an over-unity device, because gravity doesn't require over-unity. Anti-gravity doesn't require over-unity. It's a step-up transformer that self-feeds itself, in which the voltage goes sky high to infinity and the current goes to zero. Now, I learned through extensive work on various electronic simulators, starting off with Paul Falstad's simulator. The version I downloaded was his 2017 version. His current version is not the same. It discourages over unity. But I found that very often when the voltage goes up, the resistance goes up as well. And that means the current goes down. Now, in a gas, the analogy is the pressure goes up and the temperature goes down. It goes down? What? Whoa! We have created absolute zero without changing the temperature. So it's still at room temperature. But electrically speaking, it's the exact equivalent had we chilled the thing with liquid nitrogen to absolute zero. But now, instead of it appearing to be very freezing cold, in which the resistance had gone down because we maintained the pressure, now we allow the pressure to go sky high and the temperature to remain fixed. But from its own perspective, not from our perspective, it looks like the object has maintained its temperature at room temperature, or whatever, that we're doing the experiment. But from its perspective, it looks like it reached absolute zero. So this is how you can have superconductivity at room temperature, because the resistance went sky high. And weird things happen when that happens. Even though the resistance went sky high because the voltage went sky high, weird things start to happen. And you start to get levitation as a side effect. But that's what it's doing. It's a feeding device that raises, because that's what transformers do. They either step up or step down voltage at the expense of current. But, here's another little tidbit. This is what had me running to the video cam from my cell phone to tape this. The 4 ball bearings. See, this is all because of that video that I had passed around. The guy is going, oh, this is, from Boston. He drove 2,000 miles, and then he bumps into a follower, I'm imagining, of R.L. Poole. Because the only reason why I found R.L. Poole all over again, rediscovered him, was because this fellow had taped this, and he said, oh, this genius, he's got a handful of followers, and yet he's figured out Ed Leedskalnin. Not completely. You admit in your book that you don't have not figured out everything. But there's another follower, and so the link is Graham Hancock has the website in his name, Graham Hancock, and there's he gives a link to your article, R.L. Poole, right there on his front page. And so I just figure, hey, it must be you that this fellow on YouTube was talking about, this genius. And a follower of, the 2 followers, one who's taking measurements in the video and the one who's busy blabbling, taking the video from Boston. And he says, look at this, there's 4 ball bearings on this device. Now, what are those 4 ball bearings for? It's because there is no axle to this device. It spins all right. See, when you have an axle, what do you have? You have a line segment, and you have 2 points on that line segment fixing the line in space, which means your axle does not move. So what happens when you rotate an axle? It's going to want to move. Just its rotation alone is going to set up vibrations along the entire length of that axle that are micro, tiny, weeny, teensy weeny. You don't see it, and you don't want to see it, because it would magnify and just throw itself off. It would shred itself into 1,000 pieces if it lost its stability suddenly. So we have 2 points normally on an axle fixing it, but he doesn't do that. He lets gravity hold his rotor in place in the midst of his stator, and he suspends the rotor on top of the stator with 4 ball bearings. Why 4? Because they better not be 3. Because 3 is going to be stable as well. But 4 is going to set up vibrations. 3 plus 1 more than the minimum in a plane, because you've got a spinning plane. An axle spins in a plane. It creates a 2-dimensional plane of spin. And all you need are 3 points to fix that plane of spin. But you add 1 more point, and you bring in the opportunity in which it must vibrate. And it's the mechanical vibration. See, I didn't know what kind of vibration. The patent that I'm referring to, United States Patent 101-44532, and I have it memorized, specifies, I just assumed, or it hinted at, reciprocation along the spin axis. Maybe I just assumed that. In any case, it doesn't matter. Because even a wobble is good enough. Even a wobble. And the Earth has a wobble, wouldn't you know it? It's a very slow wobble, but it does wobble. So we say. Yeah, we say it does wobble. That's true. With precesses, very slowly. So its levitation is pretty small by comparison, possibly, to that of a UFO device. Anyway, so those 4 ball bearings bring vibration into the rotor such that the rotor now can neutralize gravity, neutralize inertia, and send it through. Because you're doing something magical, by all accounts. I don't try to understand this. I just try to take this one step at a time, and eventually I'll, grope towards a greater understanding, like anybody else who's groping for an answer. But I don't try to remain fixed to a preconceived notion any more than R.L. Poole tries to. It's the only way to attack the problem. From the top side down, using deductive reasoning, not inductive reasoning, because you can't build upon blocks that you already know because you don't know where you're going. So you can't use inductive reasoning. You got to be a blind ass, a blind fool, and to use deductive reasoning, starting from generic, vague overviews, getting more and more precise as you go. And that's why it looks like pseudoscience, because it's the opposite approach. It's the artist's approach. I have a feel for it, I know it's true. I just gotta, it'll take a while. We'll figure out the details together, won't we? Let's just believe in it first. And they don't like that. Scientists don't like that. So the wobble is the mechanical vibration that creates the anti-gravity that is sent marked. See, we've created a signature now. And it, see, I have to disagree with Ed Leedskalnin's, or for that matter, R.L. Poole's quotation or citation of Edward Leedskalnin that magnetism is everything. No, it's not. It's the end. Well, it's the end product of dielectricity, but in that sense, it is everything because it creates matter, it creates gravity and inertia, but it does not, it's not the cause, it's the effect. But it is everything. The effect is everything. Or as Trevor Constable would say, only results count. And if Paracelsus needed to paraphrase his modus operandi, he'd say the same thing. Because he cured people of the bubonic plague using a little bit of their poop. And isopathy, a sub-branch of homeopathy, and gave it to them in a pill every day to ingest, no more than what can stand on the tip of a pin, hidden in a scrap of bread in the shape of a pill that had a slice down the length. Anyway, only results count. So all you have to do is create mechanical vibration of the spin axis of the rotor of this electrical step-up transformer, in which the voltage goes to infinity and the current goes to zero, relatively speaking. Nothing's perfect, but for all intents and purposes, it appears that the current went to zero, which means the resistance went also to infinity. And all you've got is purely voltage. But you can't kill yourself because the watts probably went down due to the laws of thermodynamics, in which the device lost some of its power, okay, due to inefficiencies in, this is the material world, and we are fraught with inefficiencies. Doesn't matter, because we are defying gravity. See, we've made the block of granite invisible to the Earth for all intents and purposes. The Earth can't see it anymore. It sees other electrostatic charges in the universe, and by seeing them, gravity is simply the dialogue between objects in space, between atoms in matter. And gravity is the result of that dialogue. But when you make an object invisible to another object, and that other object is the force, the Earth is the force of gravity, it's the man in charge, or the woman in charge, then for all intents and purposes, it has lost that block to Edward Leedskalnin, who stole it. It's as if you had this invisible cloak, and first you cover yourself with this invisible cloak, and then you steal your way into the Museum of Modern Art, and you grab a painting, but first you cover the painting with your invisible cloak. Where is it? And then you grab it and bring it in. Where is it? You've already stole it because it's invisible. Nobody sees it. It's still there, but you don't see it. It's a black hole. You see the space behind it, the wall, the stars behind the black hole, but you don't see it. So it's already been stolen, but it's still there. And then you walk out the door with it, and nobody sees you steal it because you already did by making it invisible. And then you take it out of your cloak, and woohoo, here it is. And you get to put it on your wall and enjoy the Rodin or whatever it was you stole. Rodin is a sculptor. So let's say you usually work big too. So let's say you stole a very big piece of sculptural art. Whatever you stole, you first had to make it invisible. And this is what Edward Leedskalnin does. He makes it gravitationally speaking, invisible to the Earth, so the Earth can't see it and can't have a dialogue with it. And Edward Leedskalnin can take his little pinky, you see his pinky, and push the boulder with his pinky because it has no inertia. There's a book called A Dweller on Two Planets. That's the main title, and the secondary title is Or a Dividing of the Way by Philos the Tibetan. Philos is spelled P-H-Y-L-O-S. It was published back in 1899 by the mother of her deceased son, who died in that year at the age of 22 or something, Frederick S. Oliver. He was the amanuensis, if I'm saying this correctly. Through automatic writing, he wrote the book in pieces, and it's a huge book on the history of Atlantis at a certain time period. The time frame is Philos, the Tibetan. And apparently Philos, who's a Venusian, was channeling this through mental telepathy to Frederick S. Oliver, who was responsible for Philos's death in his last human incarnation before he started to incarnate on Venus. And he's apparently currently still in that current body since the 1800s. So they have very long lifespans on Venus. But anyway, so he described how they had a monorail system in Atlantis, and the occupant in the vehicle went at high speed over hill and dale, up one side of a steep mountain and down the other, and right-angle turns exactly the way a UFO flies. So for all intents and purposes, it's a UFO attached to a monorail, which is an ingenious concept when you think about it. Take the car off the road. I always said my reactive motor that I designed that created infinite capacity for whatever power level you want, which I believe was Nikola Tesla's first EV conversion of 1897, according to Arthur Matthews, would be better suited as a UFO power technology, which raises the question, did he use a hydraulic system to transfer this high frequency of reactive power, of unlimited reactive power that, using power factor conversion could then be a potential for not infinite, but let's say any quantity of energy you want, up to infinity? Or was it a UFO device that neutralized inertia for certain parts of the motor so that he could get all the power he wanted out of the motor at no cost to the device? The watts are not any higher. We just neutralize the gravity of certain parts of the motor so that the rotor can spin without inertia getting in the way. So then you could poke it with your finger. It would take no energy at all to get it up to speed sufficiently to move the car at 90 miles an hour or whatever. And if you apply it more holistically to the whole craft, now it takes no energy to move it around, because the whole vehicle has had its inertia, because inertia is equivalent to gravity. Gravity is inertia, inertia is gravity. So when you neutralize inertia, you neutralize gravity, okay? For those of you. If I have this right, not being a formally trained physicist, where was I going with that? Anyway. I got lost on a tangent. I get so excited over this. So basically, Ed Leedskalnin preceded the U.S. patent. And instead of getting a patent, he hid the knowledge in Coral Castle, along with all of the other tidbits, which I don't, want to say nay to at all, because it makes total sense. What you're saying, Poole. It's a very short book. You have to go get it. It's really a fascinating book. But from the standpoint of saying, okay, this is nice, but how do we translate that information to a UFO device? Because we want to be independent of celestial mechanics. We don't want to have to wait for a conjunction of the alignment of certain planetary, or celestial, I should say, objects we just want to do a craft and go to the market and get some groceries, or go visit our friend in Europe from California, without worrying about waiting in long lines at the airport and whatnot. We just want to get in our levitational craft and zip on over there, visit our friend, have lunch in Germany with our friend, or Italy, and then come back for dinner in California. So why not, So I think I've stated all the points, because I'm not going to cover the U.S. patent, because I already did that. I've covered it in several videos. But this is the linkage to Edward Leedskalnin via R.L. Poole. And it makes total sense, if I'm saying your name correctly. Not Poole. I believe that E is silent on the end of your name. I could be wrong. It may be Poulet. Maybe French. Poulet. I may be saying it wrong. Sorry if I am. Or it may just be poo. Maybe the LE is silent. French, do everything different. RL Poo? I don't know. I don't know how you pronounce her name. Sorry, I better stop. I'm digging myself deeper into a mud hole here. Is it getting hot? Am I getting... Oh, so the whole point is that the sun is not hot. This is the beauty of this situation. You have really opened up my eyes. And if it wasn't for Wilhelm Reich, I wouldn't have understood what's going on here. So you're sending an electrostatic charge along the chain, but it's not a whole lot of wattage, so you don't get electrocuted. There's no arcing to the ground, because the wattage is no different than before, maybe slightly less, but nothing to create an arc. It's just that the voltage goes up, the current goes to zero, and it carries the signature of the wobble, the mechanical vibration of the spin axis of the electromagnetic field that this rotor is creating. It's sending all of that information along the iron chain that is wrapped around the boulder. Now, if you manage to send that information at the atomic level of the boulder, now you've turned the boulder into clay, wet clay. Because the atoms are no different than celestial objects. They maintain their rigidity of structure, of chemical composition, of granite, or whatever it is, due to the fact that life is normal, nothing's changed. But if we change their electrodynamics, they are no longer rigid, and they will melt at the push of our hand, and we can pat it smooth as if it were clay. And so we don't have to wait for a celestial alignment to do this. Maybe then we have to increase the wattage to overcome the need for a celestial alignment. That could be. Yeah, because a celestial alignment is going to increase the wattage that you're working with. But these other factors have to be in place. The voltage has to be sky high and the current has to be zero. See, I never did this in my reactive motor circuit. I was able to get an apportionment, a partitioning, in which one area the voltage was high and the current was low, and the other area the current was high and the voltage was zero. But I never got, on the other side, current to go to zero. It just, when the voltage went up, it just went down quite a significant amount. Because I was using an electronic simulator, and simulators don't simulate reality. They simulate an approximation of reality based on the designers of the simulator software. So in Ed Leedskalnin's case, and all the builders of Stonehenge and the various monuments in the West and in the Middle East, obviously celestial alignment would give you more wattage, more power to work with. And then you could really rock. You can pun intended. You could get your rocks to float or hop, as the case may be. Oh, this is amazing. This is amazing because it, as above, so below. It's going to affect the structure of, and see, this is what's beautiful. You said in your book that it's the harder stone that becomes more receptive to levitation, and softening. And isn't this exactly what Nikola Tesla did at Wardenclyffe? He used bedrock to send his energy along one single wire technology through the bedrock, not through the air, like everybody says, not through the soil, but through bedrock. Because he had an upside down antenna. He tunneled into the bedrock beneath Wardenclyffe and put his aerial in the bedrock. And what we see, the globe, the round sphere on the top of Wardenclyffe Tower, was the imaginary antipole, which it's imaginary because it never creates sparks. Unlike a Tesla coil of modern era, which is a false tuning of the Tesla coil, you're not supposed to get sparks because it's not supposed to be an antipole. It's supposed to be an imaginary antipole that's simply sitting there in physical space, but mathematically and electrodynamically, it does not exist. In other words, there's no dipole situation. So when Thomas Bearden says, don't kill the dipole, what you do is you fold it. See, this is what I realized what my reactive motor design did. When you take Eric Dollard's LMD, or analog computer in LMD mode, and fold it so that one capacitor is laid on top of another and becomes the other capacitor, you now have a monopolar circuit. Even though you see it's got a pair of everything, 2 capacitors and 2 coils, opposite each other in a square arrangement, you don't have a dipolar arrangement anymore. For all intents and purposes, you have a monopolar, capacitively speaking, a monopolar arrangement of capacitance. And when you have that, that means voltage-wise, you have a monopolar circuit that has no antipole. It's an imaginary antipole to push against, as Eric Dollard would say. You're pushing against nothing, which is why you can get a standing wave of 180-degree difference between current and voltage displacement in an AC system, in an AC cycle. So now you have negative unity power factor, and you can play with it as you want to and create over unity. But in this situation, we don't need over unity. We're just trying to defy gravity, and so we don't need more power. We can have slightly less due to thermodynamic losses. We just have to get the voltage up there to infinity and get the current to such a tiny fraction it looks like it's zero, such that we can't even measure the current anymore. We long since lost the ability, and it keeps growing. As you said, the guy said on that video, the Bostonian said, the voltage goes sky high and keeps building up to humongous values because it keeps escalating. It keeps going up. That means the current keeps going down to zero. Zeno's paradox is not a paradox. It simply tells you how to do things. You keep having the current, and you keep doubling the voltage, and you keep doing that. And so you never reach infinite voltage. You never reach zero current. But you keep doing that, approaching zero current, approaching infinite voltage, and that's the electrical condition you need in the electrical device of this modified perpetual motion holder, modified according to our standards, conventional standards, modified according to R.L. Poole's discovery of what you're supposed to do with the PMH, the perpetual motion holder, to modify it to behave. But of course, the PMH is not the device at Coral Castle, because we're told it used to have 6 rotor coils, and it had a number of magnets surrounding the rotor in the stator, permanent magnets separated by paper, and 4 ball bearings. So it was a bit different design than what we're told by Ed, because the PMH is simply a demonstration tool to learn the basics. It's not the final circuitry design that he used. He had 6 coils resting on, comprising the rotor, resting on 4 ball bearings. Now we're told that the coils were confiscated because the copper was valuable. Are we so sure he used copper wire? He certainly didn't use copper wire to transfer the energy from his motor to the boulder through the tripod. He used an iron chain. And an iron chain is a very interesting thing. An iron chain is made of the exact same substance that the core of a PMH is made of. which is perfect for a PMH experiment, because you're creating magnetic remnants such that the magnetism, the substance never forgets the magnetism you put in there if you don't change what you put there. It'll stay there for eternity. That's the whole beauty of a PMH experiment. The bar stays attached to the horseshoe magnet because you've disconnected your power source from your two coils, and the magnetic remnants is perfect. This is what computer memory was between the years of 1955 and 1975. They made use of magnetic core memory, magnetic remnants, Anyway, so you're sending magnetism. See, I can see why Leedskalnin thought very highly of magnetism. You're sending it through the iron chain. So why should I think that there were copper coils? Or let's put it this way. Maybe they were copper coils, but that's not what the iron chain is attached to. It has to be attached to the permanent magnets, and that must be what the permanent magnets are for. For connecting, for interfacing between the device, the magnetism of the device, and the magnetism of the chain that's going to wrap around the boulder. So when the boulder is wrapped by the chain, you get a general field surrounding the boulder and the immediate vicinity, causing the boulder to levitate. But if you were to send that energy to a knife, now you've got point accuracy, and now you're going to melt the stone without raising its temperature. You're going to levitate the atoms of granite, or whatever it is, oolitic limestone, apart. You're going to levitate them. You're going to cause them to lose their inertia so that you can take your knife and just slice through that thing like it was butter, warm butter. So it depends on what your implements are. So we're left with the implements, but we can't understand how we use them. This is beautiful. This is beautiful. This is absolutely beautiful. Now I think I've covered everything, and I better upload this. 42 minutes, not bad. Sometimes they take longer. Okay, now thank you for your book. Your book is beautiful. I love it. It's worth every penny, guys and gals. Go get it and read it. It's beautiful. But it obviously is not going to tell you everything, but it sure does help. It sure does help.